Hello, am I audible, ma'am?
Yeah, yeah, yeah.
Yes. So, very
Can
good
you hear
evening.
me?
Yes, ma'am, I can hear you properly.
Okay.
So, very good evening to all, and welcome back to our lecture series for BCom Semester 5 students. And today we are on day 9, session 12. In our today's session, our faculty, Dr. Swati Chakraborty madam, and her topic of discussion for first half, introduction and the international income part of the macroeconomics. Over to you, ma'am.
Okay. Thank you, Rona, and thank you, Shamim, also to helping me with the running of the PPT. So yes, if I could just start, you can just put on the PPT, please. Not this one, Shamim. Uh, the other one. Yes. Thank you. And good evening to everyone present out here. So, as Raunak said, with the first part of today's session would be the introduction to macroeconomics, and then followed by national income, the entire portion of national income. So, let's start without any further delay. Can we just go to straight away to slide number 3, please? Y- Yes. So let me just give you a brief introduction before what is economics, before we go further into what is macroeconomics and what is the purpose of macroeconomics, what are the objectives, what it does, what are the concepts that is actually included that we work on. So that's the introduction part. So economics, when we say economics in general, it's basically in an inquiry or further exploration into the nature and the causes of wealth of the nation. What is the nature of the wealth of a country and the causes? And the term economics, it's a Greek word. It's come from the Greek word oikonomos or oikonomia, which means actually the task of managing a household. Okay, and it was the previously the French economists, French the French mercantilists, they also use the term economic politique. That is politic means political economy, to actually discuss about matters related to public administration. So it comes from there. The next slide, please. Okay, so when we say economics, what is economics now? It's definitely, as I said, it's talking about the nature of the wealth of nations, and the causes. Now, different economists had given different definitions for it, and the first definition was actually who's also called the first modern economist, that is Adam Smith. The first definition came from him, where he said that economics, when we say economics, it's actually an inquiry into the nature and causes of wealth of nations. That's what we just spoke about. That's what economics is. It's come from Adam Smith's definition. And this was followed by the other economists like the Wells. I mean, there are a lot of definitions, but I've just picked up the major ones. So Alfred Marshall had he then his definition. He according to him, when said that when we talk of economics, it's basically the study of man in human beings in their ordinary business of life. So it's the actually when we say so it's talking about both the study of wealth and the study of mankind. So, and this is where Alfred Marshall was the first economist who actually said that economics is not a natural science like physics or chemistry. It's a social science. So it came from the concept of social science, came from Alfred Marshall. Next slide, please. Okay. So then we also have from Lionel Robbins, who also defined economics as saying that it's talking about the allocation of scarce resources with n number or countless possible uses. So this is the most important thing. This is where we concentrate on the entire subject of economics, whether we talk of microeconomics or whether we talk of macroeconomics, that there are limited resources. Resources are limited, but there are unlimited needs or uses. To how to allocate these resources, the scarce resources, to all these unlimited means. How do we allocate when the resources are limited? So that's what he had to say, that economics is a science which actually talks of human behavior, like how do human beings actually allocate the like we know money is limited, right? We have, if we earn, we have a limited income, anyone, whatever be the our level of income, but we have n number of needs. How do we needs and wants, how do we allocate that money to fulfill our different needs? So resources are scarce, but there are n number of countless, or as we say, countless, endless needs. How uses, how do we use it? What is, so we are actually talking of priority. So that's what it's talking about, and this concept came from Lionel Robbins, who actually spoke about this. Next slide, please. Okay. So the modern definition of economics came in the year 20th century from Paul Samuelson, who actually, like when he actually said that it's coming again, the same see, it's saying that it's studying how people and society choose with or without the use of money. Sometimes we don't need money, sometimes the money is needed. How to employ the scarce resources which has alternative uses. How do you utilize it to ensure to that the different commodities are produced over time and they are being distributed to the society for consumption, not just for present consumption but also future consumption. So it's, there has to be a balance between present and future needs, one satisfaction of present as well as future needs. So it's not just that using the resources, either sometimes we need the resources which has monetary value, or sometimes we don't need money, but you, how to use the resources. It is not right that we use our resources for the present needs of the present generation and exhaust it, and then the future generation are into problem. So there has to be a balance. How do we or other words, how do we protect our resources? How do we preserve our resources so that it's used not just for the present needs but also for the future needs? Okay, next slide, please. So when we talk, now we coming up to the main part, that is when we talk of economics. Now economics, we know, is broadly divided into two parts. One is microeconomics and the other is macroeconomics. So I'll just give a brief intro of a brief its introduction or of what microeconomics, so that it becomes easy. It will be also a revision for you so that it becomes easy for you to understand what macroeconomics is. Can we go to the next slide, please? Next slide. Yes. So microeconomic, micro means small. We know that, right? And economics, we just explained that it's a management of household. So where we are, when we talk of microeconomics, we are talking of managing small business units at individual level, households, or at the small businesses at individual level. Individual, an individual, where we talk of human being, or a single firm, or a single, like within an economy also a region of the economy of the country. Or when we take the entire world as a global economy, in that case a country's economy becomes microeconomics, because the global economy, that's the entire economy, we take the entire economy. So each country's economy at that time becomes microeconomics. So that's what microeconomics is. uh, so it's where the and actually if we look into it, So, until the Great Depression came about, that is still the until the 1930s, the entire subject matter is of economics is was considered as microeconomics. They didn't there wasn't any division as such as micro and macro. It was just considered as economics. And only after Great Depression, that's when it came about. That's when it started coming about, and that's when the concept of macroeconomics started coming in, because that's when the need to study the individual economy of different nations came about. And that's where it comes about. That's when we were talking about the global economy, what is happening. So on a broader scale, what is happening. So that's when, in the 1930s, after the world was hit by the Great Depression, the concept of macroeconomics came about. Not before that. At that time, the entire subject matter of economics, as we say, is what was broadly limited to what we know is microeconomics. Not before that. Can we go to slide number 10, please? Okay. Right. Just a moment, please. So when we talk of macroeconomics, macroeconomics is when is just when we micro we are talking of micro we said it's managing of the individual economy of households or economy at like individual economy, if we take the whole world economy as a whole, or we talk of a single firm. But macroeconomics is as we is what we say is macro means large, the entire concept, the aggregate. So that's where we are talking of either the entire global economy, where individual countries are micro, it's an aggregate of all the nations. Or when we talk within a country, we take the entire economy of a nation as a whole, like which is comprising of different regions. So different regions within a country is micro, and the entire country is considered as a macro aggregate of all the regions. So it's macroeconomics is an aggregate, and macroeconomics, as I just said, is a comparatively it's much a younger branch or a new branch of economics. New as compared to micro, not as a whole in absolute sense, but in relative concept if we compare with microeconomics. So and the concept of macroeconomics, it first came about with Keynes, John Maynard Keynes, in his book, The General Theory of Employment, Interest, and Money. So that's where that is the foundation of macroeconomics. So when we talk of macroeconomics, as I said, it's basically we are talking of large, not macro. Macroeconomics, macro means large, and economics, as we said, managing of households. So we are talking about the performance, the structure, behavior, decision making of an economy as a whole, and not individual markets. So this is where we are talking of national economy, regional economy, or global economy. Depends on what we are actually considering it. What are we actually analyzing it? Can we go to slide number 13, please? Yes. So now different economists again have given different definitions of macroeconomics, but which means the same. So I've just picked up some of the important ones. So first is where we talk of Bolding, Bolding had to say when we talk of macroeconomics, it's a study of nature, relationships, and behavior of aggregates of economic quantities. Aggregates. Now aggregates, when we talk, what are these quantities that we are talking about? We are talking of the national income in when we aggregate the income of all the individuals in a country, that's a national income coming up in income. We're talking of the general price level in the economy. We're talking of the national output. So income, national we are talking of the national output, we are talking of national income, we are talking of the general price level of the economy. So aggregates, total, sum total. Samuelson also had similar things to say, where he again said that it's a macroeconomics when we say, so it's a study of the behavior of the economy as a whole. So where we are talking about the same thing, our nation's output, nation's employment, the nation's price level, and foreign trade. Foreign trade also comes into play. So this is basically like in general, again, if we just brought it down, just broadly categorized, there are three concepts, which is there three macroeconomic variables, which is most important, quite important out there. One is the national output, the total output of the economy. That's what comes up. Second comes up the employment level of the country, and the price level comes into play. And within this, we have other factors also, sub factors are also there. Okay, so now can we go to the next slide, please? Okay, so the main thing, like when we talk of what is when we look into the definitions of all the which is put forward by all the economists, the main thing is when we talk of macroeconomics, it's talking about the study of the behavior and performance of the economy as a whole. It's talking about that. So it's basic where we are talking about the interaction between the different factors of that is responsible for determining the level and growth of national output, the employment level, the general price level of the economy of the country, and the balance of payments position of an economy. So what are the factors, what are the forces that helps in determining these concepts, these variables? These are the economic variables, macroeconomic variables. So that's what macroeconomics talks about. Okay, can we go to the next slide, please? Okay, so nature of economics, macroeconomics. What are the nature? First, it talks about, as I just now said, it's a study of aggregates or averages covering the entire economy. Now, what are these variables that we are talking about? Employment, the total employment of the country, the national income, the national output, the total investment, total consumption, total savings, aggregate supply or demand, general price level. So these are the things which is called, and this is also what we say is a theory of income and employment, or income analysis, where we are discussing with the problems of unemployment, economic fluctuation, inflation, international trade, and growth coming into play. The second factor is the business cycle. So where we are talking of like the effect like of investment on the total output, total income, and the aggregate employment in the country. Like business cycle, it's a cyclical phase where so it affects at different stages, or every country undergoes this or experiences business cycle, and every country is at every moment at different stages of the business cycle. So they experience different types, like the effects of investment on the output, income, and employment. It's different because based on where their position is in the business cycle. The third factor is in terms of monetary sphere, where it macroeconomic studies the effect of total quantity of money on the general price level. So we are talking about inflation coming into play. This is indirectly talking of inflation. Fourth is international trade, where we are talking of balance of payments, what the trade balance is, like what is the total amount of exports, imports, like we are talking about the direction of trade, like whether it's more of exports or more of imports, and with like how is it going, with whom we are also the trade is happening. That also helps in determining the inflow or outflow of the foreign reserves, foreign aid, that also comes into play. So these are like these are the factors that either helps in bringing the economic development, or it can actually cause let's say a stagnancy in the growth or a decline in the growth. It depends. These are the factors. Okay, next slide, please. Yes, scope and importance of macroeconomics. Now, when we talk the first scope that we are talking about, it's macroeconomics helps in understanding the working of the economy as a whole. Working of the economy, how? Like the way we measure the total income, the output, employment, nature of employment, general price level, the problems. These are we are measured. In other words, these are the problems of the economy. These are the factors, and these are measurable. These are measurable. This helps in understanding how a particular economy works. Macroeconomics is also quite useful in determining the economic policies. Economic policies are coming like regulating, controlling the economic policies, and bringing about the necessary changes or sometimes introduction of some new policies. And because especially it's with the where underdeveloped economies, so they are faced with so many problems, like so there it plays a very crucial role. Not that it doesn't play any role in the developed economies, of course it does, but it's more crucial, it's more prominent if we see where of the underdeveloped economies which has more number of problems. So third fact is the general unemployment. So this is also called the Keynesian theory of unemployment, where the level of unemployment, it depends on effective demand. That is where we are talking of the aggregate demand, aggregate supply of model, where unemployment is basically caused by deficiency of effective demand. Unemployment, when there is lack of or the shortage of effective demand, unemployment will happen, because when we do not have demand in the economy, how can we act, how can production happen? Production will also go down. That means less people employed, so unemployment. That's why it's important. Then we also have national income. National income, so where the entire performance of the economy is actually evaluated in terms of national income. And it's necessary to analyze it. It's because it had become necessary after the Great Depression, because it's where national income. So here we are talking about the causes of general overproduction, unemployment. So everything comes into play. So that's why national income is also important. Next slide, please. Yes. So economic growth. That's the next point. Economic growth. That is why we are talking of economic growth, because it is important. It's the basic for where we're talking of the resources and capabilities of economy evaluation, planning for economic development. So that comes into play. So because economic and economic growth is the, when we talk of growth, that is the base or base for economic development. Growth has to take place. First growth, then economic development comes into play. So that's why economic growth is quite crucial. Monetary problems, a country faces monetary problems, so it can be analyzed, like what is the value of money or value of currency in that economy. Different currencies have different values. It depends on where exactly is the what is the position of an economy in terms of the business cycle. That is whether the economy is having an high inflation or a deflation. So depends. The value of the currency of that country depends, and how it affects the economy. Business cycle, again, as we just spoke a while ago, so it's important to also business cycle, analyzing the business cycle, where what are the causes of economic fluctuation of that economy. Why is there a fluctuation in certain countries? The economic fluctuation is not so volatile, is less volatile, and especially with developed nations, the volatility of economic fluctuation is less as compared to underdeveloped nations. So what are the causes for this, and what has to be done? So we what has to be done means there we are talking of the national policies, what sort of policies has to be implemented. That's why it's important. Understanding the behavior of individual units. Now when we are talking of the economy as a whole. So economy as a whole, when we are talking about it, so aggregate, macroeconomics is an aggregate of what? Aggregate of individual units. So when we are talking of aggregate demand, so we have to know what is the demand for individual products, right? And individual products, demand for individual products, that actually also depends on the aggregate demand of the in the country. If the aggregate demand in the country is low, then what will happen? It will affect the production for at the individual level also. So that's why the microeconomics, because macroeconomics, as I said, is an aggregate of individual units, so microeconomics depends on macroeconomics. It depends how does would an individual firm perform, like what will be their demand, the individual demand at the individual level. It depends on the overall demand in the economy. So that's where the interlink comes into play. Can we have the next slide, please? Okay. So objectives of the macroeconomics policy, there are three major objectives. One is full employment. To its full employment means a situation when all people who are willing to work at the existing wage rate. That this is quite important. That the phrase existing wage rate. So those who are willing to work at the existing wage rate are able to get work. That is full employment. It doesn't say, when we say full employment, it doesn't mean that everyone in the economy is getting job. No. If I don't want to work at the given wage rate, that I am not considered as part of when I and then you cannot say that I'm unemployed. That concept is not there. When we say full employment, we are looking at what is the total number of people who are actually willing to work at the existing wage rate in the economy, and whether they have got job or not. If everyone in the economy who are willing to work at that existing wage rate gets the job, then we say full employment of the economy. The economy is experiencing full employment. Next objective is price stability, where the price changes will happen, but it's at a modest range. It is not volatile, highly volatile. It's modest. And thirdly, we are talking of economic growth. That is where we are talking of increase in per capita income and also the improvement in the standard of living. Can we go to the next slide, please? Next slide. Okay. So these are some of the when we talk of macroeconomics, these are some of the questions object as we the questions that macroeconomics tries to answer. And we are talking of the different, from here we get the different variables, macroeconomic variables, that that every economy actually tries to address, looks into it. So we are talking of the what are the factors that determines the level of economic activities, total output, general price level, overall employment. How to achieve the equilibrium level of national income? What are the causes for fluctuation in national output and employment? What determines the general level of prices in country? What determines the level of foreign trade and trade balance? What causes disequilibrium in the balance of payments of a country? And how do monetary and fiscal policies of the government affect the economy? What are the economic policies which helps an economy to move ahead in the path, like to achieve economic growth? So these are the concepts, variables that is there, and how to achieve these variables. So that's what macroeconomics actually looks into it. Okay, right. So, can we actually in my few the next few slides, if it can be run, I have some activities which can be done by the students, and where I there is one activity where it's talking about to discuss. If you go to the next slide, please, that is slide number 20. 20. Yes, so this is one activity which the student you all can actually do it, where you can now looking into the various discussions that we had. So what are the main differences between micro and macro? This helps in when you to know the where we are talking about the variables that comes into play. What are the variables that is there? What are the main thrust of micro and macroeconomics? Now, if you go to slide number 22. Yes. So if you see this is the put it in a table form, tabular form when we talk of the difference, main differences, differences with regards to definition, with regards to objective, the basis, the assumptions, whatever we are talking about. So that's where. So one thing I would definitely want to talk about here is the assumption part. The assumption part where if you look into microeconomics, we are talking about the rational behavior of individuals and ceteris paribus to explain economic laws. Whereas when we talk of macroeconomics, we are talking about aggregate volume of output of an economy, size of national income, general price level, extent of resources employed. So micro is where we talk of rational behavior, and ceteris paribus, we know what it means, that other factors remaining constant. And the most important is the second assumption. That's where the thrust is. Like for microeconomics, it's based on partial equilibrium. Partial equilibrium, it's the equilibrium condition of an individual, a firm, an industry, and a factor. Whereas when we talk of macroeconomics, it's based on the assumption of general equilibrium analysis, where which is talking about number of economic variables, their interrelations and interdependencies. Why is it needed? Why do we do general equilibrium analysis? To understand the working of the entire economic system. That's where it is. Okay. Next slide, please. This is another activity which can be done. It will help you all to actually also know what is happening in different nations. So, like where just a main thing is like if you can choose, choose any two countries within SARC. That because India is also um, part of SARC, and collect the data for the last 3 years. Like if you do it and compare it with India and to see how the trend analysis, the GDP growth rate, unemployment growth, inflation rate, and then you will be, if you do a comparative analysis, you'll be able to understand, you'll be very much able to understand the different economic situation. The analysis for different countries is different. Like there is a difference. Some similarities will may be there, but there is a difference, and it will help you to also help in doing a better analysis, like how it uh, and it help you also to compare with the nations. And SARC, why I said SARC, because it's the same zone one is there, and SARC nations, they have their own policies are also there, so it becomes easier to do a comparative analysis. uh, okay, yes, next slide, please. So this actually, these are the references, and this actually finishes the first part, that is the introduction part of it. And before I go to the second part of this first session, next slide, which is the national income. Yes. So we start with national income. So can we actually go to the next slide? Yes. So the topics coverage that we have is the circular flow, the concepts of national income, measures of calculating national income, where I'll be telling you the different methods, and there are different numericals also there which you can solve based on the calculations, where I've given all the I'll be telling you the different formulas. You can use that and solve it, followed by limitations and the importance of national income. So can we go to the next slide, please? Yes. So circular flow of income. Now we are talking of a four sector model. Four sector model is where we are talking of foreign sector coming into play. Okay, fourth, what are the four sectors? Government, household, firms, and foreign sector. Now, foreign sector also includes the capital market. Now, some of the other than that, there are certain basic concepts. That is, we are talking when we talk of flow. What are we talking of? It's the flow of income and expenditure. And the assumptions that we make here is that the fourth sector consists of only the foreign sector consists of only exports and imports of goods and services, nothing else. And the imports and exports, or the import and export of goods and non-labor services, are made only by the firms, no one else. And the households exports only labor. These are the three assumptions in the circular flow of income. Can we go to the next slide, please? Okay. Now, if I could just tell you, you can see there are four sectors, as I just said: government, household, business firms, and we have the foreign countries, which is there. And in between, we have the financial market, which is that's the financial market is actually, we don't study it separately, but the financial market, or the capital market, we study it under foreign sector. It's included there. So how does it actually work? Now, if you see that household, if you look into the arrow, that households provides with all the factors of production to businesses, that is land, labor, capital, enterprise. It's given by the households. And in return, the business firms, what do? They make payments, factor payments. That is, for land, it's rent; for labor, it's wages; for capital, it's interest; and for enterprise, it's profits. Now, when using these factors of production, the firms make produce goods and services. Who consumes this? One, it's consumed by the households, and in return, what does the household do? They pay. So consumption expenditure. So that goes to they pay to the business firm. So this is the circular flow between uh, household and business firms. Now, when the production happens, when the firms are making the production, so what happens? Who else purchases? Government also purchase. Government, now what do they do? Government purchases goods and services from the business firms. They also purchase. Now, when purchase happens, means both firms are earning revenue. So from there, they have to pay tax in return. So net tax payment to the government. That's there. Now, what also, this is the relation between government and business firms. What also happens up here is, now households, they are working, they work in government offices, they do. So what happens? They get wages, they get salaries, and so from there, the households have to pay a tax, net tax payments to government. So this is the relation between households and government. Now, what also comes up is, we know that people, when people go and work in different countries, so it's from the household sector. So households export manpower. In return, what do they get? They get foreign remittances from the households. Business firms, the production that happens, so what happens? Like, they are also making they sometimes, two things happens: they are exporting as well as importing, right? Now, what happens is, when the business firms, they need they need the resources, raw materials. So they need some, see, sometimes they need also human resources are also needed. So what do they have to, if it's not found within the country, so they have to import it from foreign nations. So they get, the foreign countries, they provide all the resources, right? In return, what happens? They get payments. The business firms make payments for these imports that they make. So that's a relation between, that's a flow between business firms and foreign countries. Now, we also have something as the financial markets. What happens? Households do not spend everything. They also save. They also save. And so where do they save? They save in the financial markets. And these from the financial markets, they also give loans to business firms. They also, that's another form of investment in the business firms. So that's a one way flow that also happens. So this is what this is how the circular flow runs. Now, what do we actually see from here? That we have the factor payments to for all the factors of payment. What is it? It's the payments are made to the household, so it is their income. So factor payment if is denoted by FP, so and our household income as Y. So Y is equal to FP. And what is it actually? What is this payment that is coming up? It's the money value of output. Because using these factors, the production is made. So money value of output, which is also denoted as V. So Y equal to FP equal to V. That's how the equation, that's the relation. So, can we go to the next slide, please? Okay. So some of the when we talk of now we are coming into national income. When we talk the going more into the concepts, what are the various concepts of national income? The national income, that's the single most important variable, single most important macro variable which represents the economy as a whole. And is why what is the need for the national income data? Why is it important? Because it helps to measure the standard of living of the economy. It helps in formulation of various economic policies. It is also forms the basis for comparison about of the different economies. So as we say, international comparison. That's how we say the status, economic status of different nations. How do we do it? It is done with the help of national income data. Can we go to the next slide, please? Next slide. Can we have the next slide? Yes, thank you. So when we talk of this is where national income, it refers to the aggregate money value. The aggregate money value. What are we talking about? We are talking of now aggregate money value. One has to understand where there's something called transfer payments and factor payments. Transfer payments is not included here. It's the factor payments. And the final of what? Of the final goods and services. Now, what one has to be also careful that we are considering final consumer and final producer goods, not intermediate products. That has to be there. And here, and one has to be also careful with where we are talking of consumer goods, producer goods. What are the final consumer goods? What are the final producer goods? That we need to know, which resulting from economic activities. Now, what activities, when we talk of economic activities, one again has to be very careful with economic and non-economic production. One has to be careful with this. Whose activities? Of the residents of a country. And what's the time period? Over a period of 1 year. So these phrases which I've highlighted in bold, I've made it bold. These are important. Aggregate money value. We are talking of factor payments. Final goods and services, not intermediate products, from which we get from economic activities, not non-economic production. And it's done by the residents of a country within a period of 1 year. So that's what is national income. So now can we go to slide number 29? Yeah, slide 20. Yes, slide number 20. Uh, 29. Sorry, 29. Sorry, my mistake. It's 32. 32, please. Okay. So, how do we calculate national income? National income is also called net national product at factor cost. So, these are some of the concepts that we have when we calculate national income. GDP, NDP, that's gross domestic product, net domestic product, net national product, gross national product, marginal product, market price, MPs, market price, FCs at fixed cost or so factor cost. that is, sorry, fixed, not fixed cost, but factor cost. So we also have nominal and real GNP, GNP deflator. So the different methods of calculating national income, and what are the inclusions and exclusions in the national income estimates, private, personal income and personal disposable income. So these are the things that we have to take into consideration when we calculate the national income. Uh, can we go to the next slide, please? Yes. So the first, this is the general conversion that we have. That is GNP. This is there, but I would prefer to show it in a. There's another gra graph, which is another picture, which is then I have another uh, file. I've just drawn it. Shamim, if you could just put on the PDF folder, please. The first slide, PDF. Yes, you see this is where we have the entire conversions that we come across with. I'll just tell you how do we go about. So we start with the GNP at MP, right? Market price, the gross national product and market price. GNP MP minus depreciation gives you NNP at MP. On the right hand side, if you see GNP MP minus net indirect taxes, that gives you GNP FC. In the middle, if you see GNP-MP minus net income from abroad, that gives you GDP at MP. Now, what also happens is NNP-MP on the entire extreme left minus net income from abroad gives you NDP-MP. NDP-MP can also be got from GDP-MP. That is, if you GDP-MP minus depreciation. Now, on GDP-NP minus net indirect taxes, on the other hand, gives you GDP-FC. GDP-FC can also be got from GNP-FC if you minus net income from abroad from GDP-MC. You will get that. Now, next comes up is the NNP-FC. It can be calculated two ways. NNP-MP minus net indirect taxes or GNP-FC minus depreciation. Now, next comes up is the final thing, that is we say NDP at FC. NDP-FC can be calculated in three ways. One, from NDP-MP minus net indirect taxes. Second, GDP-FC minus depreciation. And third, NNP-FC minus net income from abroad. Now, when we talk of net indirect taxes, how do we calculate that? That is indirect taxes minus subsidies. And net factor income from abroad. How do we calculate this? That is through when we subtract the factored income from abroad minus factored income to abroad. That gives you net factored income from abroad. So this is the conversion. So using this, we can calculate any of these concepts just by applying the formula. Can we go back to the original PPT, please? Yeah, can we go to the next slide, please? See, this is the numerical that I've given. Like, if you use the same conversions that I just said, you just have to subtract wherever addition and just use the formula straight away. You will get the value. So this is the practice for you. It's a numerical on conversion. Uh, can we go to the next slide? Okay. So the next thing that comes up is where we are talking of real and nominal GDP. Now, when we talk of what is the difference? Now, when we talk of the real GDP, real means this is where we are talking of inflation. Inflation, the concept of whenever we say real, that's the inflation comes into play. So real GDP, that's what we are talking about, is the sum of all the production, the total total production of final goods, which is calculated at their base year price. When we calculate it at their current prices, that's called nominal GDP. When we take nominal current price, we are excluding the effect of inflation. So real GDP is actually, when we say real GDP, that's what it measures, the actual production and the level of final goods adjusted for inflation. Whereas on the nominal GDP, it shows a change even though the output remains constant, but it may, nominal GDP may show a change. May. Because why am I saying it's may? Because the product, we are not considering the effect of inflation up here. Okay. Can we go to the next slide, please? Okay, how do we actually do it? The calculate, this can be again some numericals which can be done. I've given the formula. Now, when we talk of the nominal value, we are talking of we taking the like if we here the base price is given as 2010, and the nominal price, the current price is the 2020. So the production that has happened, that is in the current year, the 2020. That's why I said the quantity production may remain changed, as just said. So total the nominal value, when we say find the nominal output, so or nominal GDP, that is quantity, the current production, that is Q1, into the current price. So if we take the first thing, agricultural sector, that is Q1 is 100 and P1 is 50. So 50 into 100 is 5,000. Whereas when we talk of the real income, that is real GDP, we are talking about it, we are talking of the current production into the base year's price, that is base year given for the agricultural sector is 40. So 100 into 40, that is 4,000 real value. Why is the real value is lesser compared to nominal value? Because of the inflation. Inflation, what happens because of inflation? Prices starts going up. So how do we measure what is the actual value? We have to take into consideration that today 100 kgs today at when the price is 50, what will be its values say 10 years before? That gives you the inflationary situation. That gives the real picture. That's why we calculate the real GDP. So okay, I've also given another exercise in the next slide, so that can be also done. But that can be done by y'all. Can we just go to the next slide, please? Next slide. Yes. So how when we, this is the GDP deflator. I was just talking about GDP deflator. So what is it? What is GDP deflator? GDP deflator is the adjustment factor to convert nominal GDP to real GDP. And what's the formula? The real GDP is equal to nominal GDP divided by GDP deflator into 100. That's how we convert the nominal GDP to real GDP. Okay. Uh, can we go to slide number 40, please? Yes. So what are the methods of calculating national income? There are three methods. One is the net product method, also called the value added method. Second is the factor income method. And we also have the expenditure method or income disposal method. Now, please, next slide, please. Okay, so the net product method or value added method, what is it actually? So we have three different sectors, right? Broadly, primary, secondary, and tertiary. So what do we do? First, we need to find out the gross value added by all the sectors or firms. Okay, that is called GVA at market price or GDP at MP. That gives you GDP at MP. So we have, how do we calculate the GDP at MP for each sector? We have to find out the total value of output at market price in that sector minus the intermediate consumption and this we have to calculate for all the three sectors. Then we add up all the three. You see that blue, so I've circled it with blue. That addition for three sectors, that gives you the GDP at MP for all the sectors. Okay, minus NIT, that is the in that's when we talk of net indirect taxes. NIT is net indirect taxes minus depreciation plus net factor income from abroad gives you NNP at FC. That's how we calculate national income when we use the value added method. That's where it comes up. Now, when we talk of the market value, like if we, as I said, we have to calculate the the gross value of output at market price for each sectors. Now how do we do that? Like how do we calculate that? The market value that we are saying, we are talking of sales. Can we go to the next slide, please? Yes. So we the first step was, as I said, to calculate the GDP at MP. So we have to find out the market value of all the product of final products by all the sectors. What is it actually? How do we find that? It's sales stock. Sales stock means domestic sales plus exports plus change in stock. Change in stock means closing stock minus opening stock. So if you add these two, sales stock and sales plus change in stock, that gives you the market value of final product. Now, once we get that, from there we calculate the value, we subtract the value of intermediate production to get GDP at MP. And then we can, once we get it for all the sectors, we add up the GDP at MP. When we get it, then we subtract the net net indirect taxes, then minus the depreciation, add net factor income from abroad to get NNP at FC. Okay, so using these formula, we can this I've have next slide. If you see, I've given a numerical which can be done just using these formulas. So just use this conversion and this formula, you will get it. The values are all given to you. There are two exercises which is given. Uh, okay, can we go to slide number 45? Yes, these two you can do, and then okay. So the next that comes up is the the second method. Second method is the factor income method. Now, how do we do this? What's the formula? There are three things that we have to take into consideration. One is compensation to employees. Second is operating surplus, and third is mixed income of self-employed. A compensation to employees includes wages and salaries in cash as well as in kind, plus employers contribution to social security schemes, which includes pension, insurance, provident fund, plus and plus we have allowances plus other reimbursements. Altogether, this is compensation to employees. When we talk of operating surplus, we have the rent, we have the royalty, interest, profit. Now, when we say profit, what does it comprise of? It comprises of the corporate tax, undistributed profits, and dividends. The last component is the mixed income of self-employed, which is where we are talking of self-employed individuals and unincorporated business, which generate this form of income. This mixed income actually arises when elements of factor incomes cannot be separated from each other, when we cannot separate the various elements of factor incomes. So now we have these three components: compensation to employees, operating surplus, mixed income of self-employed. So we add it. To add it, we get net domestic product at factor cost, NDPFC. If you add net factor income from abroad to NDPFC, we get NNPFC. That's the how we calculate national income using factor income method. Now, when we use this method, using this formula, we we can solve numericals. I've given it again in the next slide. If you see it, it can be. Can we go to the next slide? So you can use same using the same formula. You can actually calculate this. Okay. So I've given two such exercises. Uh, and then if we scroll down to slide number 49, yes. Now this is the third method that we have, that is using the expenditure method. Now how do we do this? Now if you see, there are various components up here. There are four different components which is up here. One is the private final consumption expenditure, PFCE. Second is the government final consumption expenditure. We're talking about expenditure method. So we're looking at it from the expenditure point of view. That is GFCE. Then we talk of income from exports. That is net exports. Exports minus imports. And the fourth the component is gross domestic capital formation, GDCF. What does it it comprises of? Gross domestic or business fixed capital formation, GD or BFCF, plus change in inventory. Now when we add all these four components, we get GDP at MP. Now GDP and MP, now we had done it before. What happens, we know it from the conversion. Like if you subtract GDP net indirect taxes from GDP MP, we get NDP FC. Now, if then from there we add net factor income from abroad, NFIA, so we get NNP FC. So this is the expenditure method. So we can calculate national income from three different sides. One from the factor payments from the factor incomes, one from the expenditure side, other is from the intermediate production, the gross value added. So three different sides it comes up. So again, there are some numericals given. So if you can just use the formula and you will be able to solve it. Can we go to uh, 50 and then we can go to 51? Can go to 51. This is a numerical that we have. If you yes, so I've put all the three formulas in one slide in a summarized way. That is, we have expenditure method, income method, production method. Production is where we are talking the net value added from various sectors. Income method, where we are talking about the incomes of the different employees, that is their incomes from various the total factor payments that's coming up. And where we are talking about expenditure, that is the sum total of all the final expenditure. So these are three, and we have the formula here. So if you can, this is in one nutshell in one place, so it becomes easy for you to understand. Okay. Can we go to the next slide now? Yes. So this is the next that we have. That is, we are talking about how to calculate private income, personal income, and personal disposable income. So first, we need to know what are these three concepts. Private income, when we say, so it's the income obtained by private individuals from any source. That means factor income as well as transfer income, any source. This is income. And also, other than the income earned by the individuals from any source, also we have the retained earnings of corporations. So these two together. Now personal income, we're talking of total income received by the individuals of a country from all sources before direct taxes in 1 year. And personal disposable income is the actual income which can be spent on the consumption by the individuals. So when we get our salary, that is the personal income, the gross income coming into play, whatever income we are earning, that's the personal income, the total. And then from there we have to pay taxes. After payment of taxes, what is left on hand is the personal disposable income which we can spend actual. Okay, so can we go to the next slide, please? Okay, so NNP NNPFC. So what is it? NNPFC, it actually comprises, like when we see that it's it good looks, it's coming into that government plus non-government sector, that is the private sector that is coming up. And now what happens from NNPFC? NNPFC comprises of both government and non-government sector income. Now if we deduct income from which is coming from the government sector, then we get NNPFC, which is accruing to the private sectors. So this is quite easy. Like NNPFC comprises of income from government and non-government. If we want to find out what is the income by the private sector, we have to just subtract the income from the government sector. Okay. Uh, can we go to the next slide, please? Yes. So this is the full conversion that we have. Now we have NNPFC. Once from NNPFC, so what do? We uh, we will subtract NNPFC. That is that is pertaining to government, right? What do we see? NNPFC. We subtract the income and from property and entrepreneurship accruing to government. We also subtract the savings of the non-departmental enterprises of the government. So this is NNPFC for the government. So what do we get if we subtract from the total NNPFC? We get the NNPFC which is for the private sector. Okay. So what do? From the when we get the NNPFC of the private sector, we add the interest on national debt, we add the dividend, so we add the current transfers from the government, we add the net current transfers from rest of the world. That gives you private income. Now if we go to the next side, the right side, from private income we subtract the corporate tax, we subtract the undistributed profits to get personal income. So once we get personal income, we subtract the personal tax or direct tax, we subtract all the miscellaneous receipts of the government, that is fees, fines, penalty, except what anything else. So then we get the personal disposable income. This is the income that we have on hand and from where we make all our expenditures. So this is how we calculate. Now using this conversion formulas, we can solve the numericals just using the formula. Can we go to the next slide, please? Okay. So this is the again a numerical, very easy. Using the same formula, we can calculate it. Uh, okay. Can we go to the next slide? Okay. Now comes up is the limitations. What are the limitations? We've been talking so much about national income importance, but there are some limitations there. First and foremost is national income does not take into consideration any non-monetary activities. It does not reflect the distribution of income in the economy. That is how uniform it is. Whether it's how uniform. No. It just tells about the total income of the economy. It does not take into consideration any externalities, and it cannot be regarded as a true index of welfare of a country because does not take into consideration any non-monetary activities. It does not. Happiness does not considered there. Happiness, satisfaction, it's not considered. So true index of welfare, country's welfare is not just measured through monetary aspects, it's also you have to take into non-monetary factors also. That is not taken into consideration when we talk of national income. Okay, can we go to the next slide, please? Okay. So what are the importance of national income when we do national income analysis? One is when we have from the national income data, it helps in the government to form the national policies. Say for instance, employment policy. It also forms the foundation for any national planning. The research scholars of economics, they use it for their research work. It helps us to know how the income is distributed in an economy under various classifications like wages, what's the total wages, rent, interest, the different distributions. It helps in making decisions like whether to increase more taxes or reduce taxes, whether to increase public expenditure or decrease public expenditure, if in case of any personal and regional disparities, what to do, and how to bring about equilibrium in the nation. So it helps. The national income data helps us. Okay. And the next slide, please. So that's these are the various sources that I've used, and you can see that under the sources I've also used. There is the fourth source, which is the numericals, where you have lot of numericals on national income. So you can actually practice that also. The different methods that I've just discussed, you can have these are there. Some are solved, some are unsolved, so you can practice. So that's it from my side in this session. Over to you, Ronak.
Thank you, ma'am. So thank you so much. Very beautiful and nice session in our FASTA. And ma'am, please take a break for a few minutes, and then we'll start our second session in the different YouTube link, and we'll join
Okay.
the
Uh,
same Google Meet link for taking the coming session. Thank you, ma'am. Thank you so
uh,
much.
yeah, Ronak, just to let you know, like, what time do you want me to join? Half an hour gap, or can I
Yes,
take
ma'am.
a?
Yes, ma'am. No problem.
So can we start around 7:40? Is that okay?
Yes, ma'am. No problem. I have no problem.
Okay, 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 okay,
Okay, ma'am.
okay. Thank you, thank you. I'm just taking leave now.
Yes,
I'll
ma'am.
join at 7:40.
Yes, ma'am. Yes,
Okay,
ma'am. Sure, ma'am.
okay. Thank you, everyone. Thank you.